Hello, everybody. All right, so we're going to start out the same way, where I sing and then we engage. Okay, so just relax and receive the energy of the song. And everyone who knows it, you're welcome to sing along. Oh, say, Safanata. Oh, say, Safanata. Ooh, ooh, hey, safe come, second. Safe come, second. Ooh, safe no. Ooh, for say, safe come, second. Hey, for no day. Hey, for no day. Come for day. He come for day. Come for day. He come for day. Hey, for no day. Hey, for no day. Oh, for sun, tien kianu. Home for sun, tien kianu. Nyam 48, Nyam Good afternoon again. Good to see all your beautiful faces. How are you guys doing today? You enjoying North Carolina? Good. And tomorrow there's a hike planned, so that'll be fun.
Top of Grandfather Mountain, 5,500 feet above sea level. Sea level? Yeah, it's a trout lake. It's nothing like that.
Thank you.
I
was ready for it.
So we just want to kind of take what we did yesterday and add to it today and address some questions that we actually felt coming from you when we were speaking. So the first thing we want to address is we were speaking about equality and how that's not the correct mindset. Did some of you have iffies about that? We want to address what we mean by that. Because we're not saying that humans aren't created equal or that men and women aren't created equal and so forth. What we're saying is that the correct mindset is harmony, not equality. So do you guys understand that premise? Because it's really important for the evolution of humanity to realize that the forced attempt at equality is actually what further enslaves you, isolates, and divides you. Because the general mindset of equality creates a comparative structure. Is this equal to that? Is this equal to that? Is this equal to that? Is the work you put in equal to the work I put in? Is the value of you equal to the value of me? Is the value of that equal to the value of this? Blah, blah, blah. And so look at what happened with the entire feminist movement. Did women focus on how to be more fully women? Fully empowered within themselves? Embodying the genuine power of women? Or did women try to become men in order to be equal with them? Yeah. And it's hurt women, and we touched on that yesterday. And it's also hurt men as well. Now, what if instead women decided, instead of trying to become men, we're going to empower ourselves to be the most powerful version of women that we can be and complement the most powerful version of men. Just imagine that for a minute. What would it be like? What would it be like in work settings? What would it be like in family settings? It would be a completely different dynamic. Probably a little difficult to even comprehend unless you happen to be one of the very rare people to grow up in an actually healthy family dynamic, which is not, it's not very common to grow up in a truly healthy family dynamic. Because in the structure that you guys currently live in, it's this constant power over. And it's this constant competition for equality. And harmony is not competitive. Harmony is complementary. So harmony is someone saying, I see the value in you, and that person saying, and I see the value in you. And together, we're going to combine that which I'm good at, that which is my natural state, with that which you're good at and that which is your natural state. And if you really look at nature, it isn't anything other than that. The trees aren't trying to be birds. The squirrels aren't trying to be grass. Or, yeah, the chipmunks aren't trying to be deer. They're not going, oh, you can reach that so much better than me. I want to be equal to that. I'm going to build myself some stilts. Each of the aspects of nature understands innately what it is and goes forth accordingly. The only species that does not do that is humans. Because humans get fed this lie through social conditioning and other things that tells you that in some way you are less than worthy for whatever reason, and in those areas where you're less than worthy, you are then expected to put forth all of this effort into becoming worthy in specific areas. And perhaps becoming worthy in those specific areas isn't innate to you at all. And then that moves into what Donna was speaking about. And what are you doing with the energy that is innate to you? What are you doing with the energy that you're bringing in? Are you actually moving it toward that which is going to truly improve you in ways that you are interested in improving? Or are you trying to expend energy in areas where you've been convinced that you don't have value and you should have some? So what happens when you, instead of agreeing to the societal pressures of what it means to be whatever, you instead actually assess who you are and where you naturally feel inclined to improve yourself? Because you're all inclined to improve yourselves. That's what your interests are. Your interests are areas that you are inclined to improve, right? Think about it. Any area that you have an interest, don't you naturally improve it? So when you try to force improvement in an area that you're not interested in, do you think that is a wise use of energy or life force? No. No, it's like pushing a boulder uphill. Right, it's not going to last because you're not interested in it. And you're not doing it authentically for you.
And you're going to be unhappy.
Yeah. I'm totally going to be unhappy. And this is how, we get clients later on in life who then realize, crap, I just spent my entire life pouring energy into things that I don't even really think are that important. But such and such told me that that was the right way to expend my energy, and I learned that if you want to be successful, you be a doctor or an attorney, whatever. And I poured my energy into that, and here I am having a midlife crisis, and I don't think any of that's important, and what I learned is that it's all bullshit, and I've been trying to become somebody else's version of myself. And what does that leave you feeling? Empty, right? And, it's really interesting when you use a word like empty, because it's accurate. If you haven't been filling yourself up, then you are empty. You are depleted. And if you're not following your natural inclination toward that which you're interested in, that which you're naturally passionate about, then you're pushing the boulder uphill, and you're feeling what exactly? What exactly are you feeling? That's the question. That's the question we often have for our clients when they're just running crazy and not really understanding why or where they're putting energy. What's the point? What are you doing with it? How is that going to enrich your life? And then how is it going to have a domino effect on those around you? It's not going to. No matter how much money you make, no matter how much success you have, no matter what kind of title you end up with, if it's not what you're naturally inclined toward being interested in, it's going to eventually hit you like a ton of bricks that your life feels empty. And when that happens, what has occurred is an entire projection has been created in the egoic field of the human being, in which case now there's all of this momentum and all of this effort and all of this energy and all of these resources that's been poured into this projected sense of self. So now there's an attachment toward that projected sense of self. And this is where you get into trouble, or where people get into trouble, because then they associate themselves with that projection. And if they're not that projection, who am I? And this is often what midlife crises are. Is this feeling of, who am I if I'm not that thing that I've invested all of this time and energy and effort into? And I have to make a choice. Am I actually going to abandon that which I've poured effort into and take a different route? Or am I going to keep pretending like this is actually important to me because I care too much about what other people think of me? And one who is in that predicament often realizes that if I move in this direction to where I'm actually going to start fulfilling myself in the ways that actually mean something to me, I'm going to have to abandon that. So that which I've always known myself to be, or which I've always told myself to be, is going to experience a certain type of death. And that's a very terrifying prospect for many people. And we'll tell you this, the majority of your world is existing exactly like what we just explained. And if you really look at the structure of everything, you can see clearly that from the time you're in your indoctrination camps called schools, by the time you leave them, you have been told over and over and over and over and over again who you're supposed to be important, what you're supposed to think about to be important, how you're supposed to behave to be important, and basically exactly how you're supposed to interact with this world to be accepted by everyone else. So you get brainwashed into the matrix until you finally realize that's really not what I want. That really doesn't mean anything to me. That really says nothing about me, who I really am. So when we start working with our students and our clients, we really try to get them into a completely different framework in regard to how they think about themselves. Meaning, we try to get our students and clients to move into an understanding about who they are at a very deep level. And one of the best ways to understand who you are at a very deep level is to understand what your genuine values are. What do you value? So for example, Angel, probably her largest value is, for those of you who know Angel, take a guess. Honesty, yes. Honesty is Angel's biggest value. And because of that, being involved in anything that's dishonest or being involved with people that are dishonest in any way is detrimental to her life force or her happiness. So if she were to describe herself, she would say, I'm someone who is very dedicated and motivated by honesty. And truly, the work that she does, the work that we do, wouldn't be as powerful if that wasn't her main value. Because what did we train her to do? Detect lies. Why was she interested in detecting lies? Because her biggest value is honesty. So when you know yourself, you know the statement that's said across all types of different philosophies and religions and spiritual ways of thinking, know thyself. That doesn't mean a shallow version of know thyself. It means a deep version of know thyself. What are my values? Am I living them? And am I holding myself accountable when I'm not living them? And then am I actually engaging in ways to be more committed to my values when I notice I'm off the path? So when you really start to reflect on this, what you'll see is that the times in your life where you've been the most unhappy are the times in your life where you've realized you've strayed, truly strayed from your genuine values in one way or another. Do any of you have experience with that? How so, Karen?
Yeah, like most of my life up to this point. So I guess I'll say it like this. When I was a kid, I knew who I was. And then I got indoctrinated into what everybody else thought I should be. Because I was very free as a child. I was the third, I was the youngest of 3 people, and my older sisters were very, like, rule followers, and I was not. I was bucking the system because I wanted my freedom. Because I like freedom. That's like a big value of mine, freedom. And so I had that as a child, and then I bought into the perspective of me that I needed to be. I needed to get married. I needed to have a job. I needed to be this professional. I needed to have all this stuff. And then slowly, over time, it started to fall away from me. The job went first, then the husband went, and then I was left all by myself trying to figure out, who am I? I don't even know who I am. I never invested in that. I invested in this projection, like you're talking about, all the things society and everybody tells you need to have. So when all that was gone, I was free. I felt better because that didn't match my true self. And so now I feel very congruent with my true self. I have the freedom that I desire, and I don't.
You're not caging yourself by what others are expecting you to be.
Correct.
So that's a deep version of freedom.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. I choose.
Yeah.
How I want my life to be, and it's not traditional to what most people would be doing in their life, and I don't care. I don't care what they all want to do. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I've never been happier.
Good.
Yeah.
What about you, Nicole?
Mine falls under the equality part that you were talking about. So I grew up, girls shouldn't do this, girls shouldn't do that. That's a guy thing, that's a boy thing. So what did I do? I went to school for all the things that my family thought I needed to do, be an accountant, be an insurance agent. I got so many degrees that they're only good to wipe my ass with, but I did all that, went on that path, and then decided, I'm gonna go into firefighting, which is what I really wanted to do because I wanted to help people. I did some holistic things, and I went into firefighting, EMT, and police work, and a whole bunch of things like that. So the whole equality thing, it'll come back and bite you in the ass. Could do the job, but again, you have guys, damn it, why'd you do this? You fought and fought and fought and fought to prove, but really you didn't have anything to prove because you were who you were. And having to realize that, and my husband was on the same fire department, career fire department I was, and that's where I struggle with that because our whole relationship was competition. I got hired before him. Actually, I beat him out of the hiring process. I got promoted before him. I became chief before him. Everything that I did, so it was always competition. So our marriage struggled immensely. In addition to people that, again, the nurture thing versus the guys. I worked with 36 men, and it was either I was always there to help, pick up, if somebody was having a bad day, I'd do their job, I did your job, your job, your job, your job, but then people took advantage of that. And then it was either you're just a suck ass trying to get someplace, or then I had all the wives that I had to deal with that, you just came here because you want to sleep with my husband. Well, that's furthest from the truth. After you work with 36 of them, you don't want nothing to do with any of them. So it was, the whole equality thing is really, really huge. And I ended up quitting the fire department for a lot of things that happened. Didn't want to. Basically went to bed one night, or I filed some different things that needed to be done because I was going to fight. And when I was in the middle of the fight, I realized, why am I fighting this? So I went home, dreamt the last 5 years of my career, which was the worst. Got up, wrote my resignation, quit the next day. Never even asked my husband. Because when I asked him, it was always, oh, it's not that bad, just suck it up, you're fine. Because he never realized it until a year ago. You know, I've been gone since 2006. Went into a bunch of different work, and my careers are extensive, but to end up back teaching firefighting. And I still struggle with teaching it because, you know, that was my life, but it's trying to teach people now how to be harmonious, like you said. Teach them a good work ethic. Teach them the difference between men and women and how we can both do the job, but we do it differently, and not to take advantage of that. But that's slowly coming to an end too, because I'm pretty much done with the whole education system, and their way of doing things does not align with my values. I have to stick it out for at least another year because I got too much wellness equipment to pay for my shop. But yeah, it's just, there's so many different aspects of how that falls into our life.
So what do you consider as one of your core values?
Integrity.
Nice.
People saying that they're going to do something and sticking with it, because so many people have said something and fucked me completely over because I was so honest. So trust for me is really hard. Now that
So would you say that actually makes you require yourself to be more trustworthy?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Trusting myself.
Yeah.
And trusting that the energy I'm feeling in somebody is true, because every career, and I've had some really amazing things, I've dealt with very narcissistic people. And each time, they were just as bad, but, they just a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less, and a little bit less. And I could feel it, but I kept thinking I could change it. I could change that energy. If I just do this, or I stay and work for this person and get his work done so he can go home and spend time with his family, everything will be, better. Well, what did I do? I sacrificed my whole life and me. But now I trust the energy, and now it's like, nope. Just like this morning, I got a text, and I'm like, yeah, no. So I have to trust that.
So when you guys are honoring your own values, you will notice that you have more energy for all kinds of things. And if you're trying to figure out what your values are, one of the best way to do that is to ask yourself what you require from other people, or at least what you wish you required from other people. Because let's be real, most people aren't requiring from others what they really want to. How many people are settling for less? Most. So when you understand what you at least wish you were holding yourself accountable to requiring, then you actually have insight into what your values are. So of course the first step of living true to your values is figuring out what they are. The second one is holding yourself accountable to them, both in your behavior with yourself and with others. Second, in the requirements that you hold for others. And a big word in society right now is tolerance, isn't it? And we're not saying that tolerance is a bad thing. In fact, to train oneself to be tolerant can be a good thing. But if, when we work with people like you who are actually interested in developing yourselves and improving yourselves, you're often the most tolerant people. And does that serve you greatly or not?
What's the situation? I would say no.
There's a line.
With boundaries.
So far, but then, yeah. I feel like I put up with more stuff that doesn't serve me than I probably need to, because I'm accepting and tolerant, and I feel like I get walked over.
You feel like you get knocked around, he said?
Yeah,
Walked over.
or just walked over, or dismissed.
Exactly. Yeah. And then what emotion does that create when that occurs?
Frustration.
And how about resentment? Yeah. So in the space of resentment in relationships with other people, is it nurturing or damaging? So then how useful is tolerant? So it's important to understand what degree of tolerance is useful for you. You each have a different answer to that. But it's really important to investigate it. Because when you're tolerant over and over and over again with something that's diminishing you, what good is it doing? Yeah, it's not doing you any favors. And since this entire retreat is about life force, we really want you to understand the relationship of the life force that you have in relation to what you're being tolerant of. And whatever story is running about why you're being tolerant. And if you were not to be tolerant, what would it mean? Because we're not advocating violence, but we are advocating honesty and boundaries. So if someone is stepping on you, or if a government is stepping on you, or a school board is stepping on you, all of this is happening right now. Is it useful to be tolerant? And if you're just not going to be tolerant, what's the best way to handle that? And we're going to tell you to disengage. In all interactions, there is an exchange of energy. When you are being tolerant, you are exchanging energy. When you're being tolerant to a degree that it's causing you to feel resentment, you're literally handing your energy over. You're allowing yourself to be sucked dry. And probably you all have experience with exactly what we're talking about. Do you? And you're taught that kind people are really tolerant. But to go ahead and hop on the narcissist train of what Nicole was saying, to those who are extremely everyone's self-interested, but to those who are extremely self-interested, like narcissistic personalities, do you think it's beneficial to be tolerant? Because are you interacting with someone who cares about how you feel in the dynamic if you're truly interacting with narcissistic personalities? No, you're not. So all you're doing is spoon feeding them what they want. Oh, you want some more of my energy? Here you go. I see how tolerant I am. I'm so awesome. I'm such a martyr. Kids, I did it for you. Bullshit. No, you didn't. And we're not trying to be rude with that. But when you deeply interact with yourself in the way that Pamela was talking about, you find these stories that you tell yourself. Well, I stayed in that relationship where someone was completely sucking me dry all the time for the kids. Was it really that? Or was it because in your mind you were playing out a scenario? Well, if I leave, then I lose my investment in that. I don't know how I'm going to make money. I don't know who I'm going to watch the kids when I do this certain thing. Is that for the kids? If you're literally running through those scenarios, is that for your kids? No. You know when it's for your kid? When you're in a relationship that feeds the kid. When you're not in a relationship that feeds the kid, it's not for the kid, and it's really just that simple. And you can take that to any degree. We're using a family scenario, but you can use that in a work scenario or friendship scenario, whatever. So what happens when you disengage instead of being overtly, fakely tolerant?
You're not giving them your energy.
That's right. And what usually happens in that kind of dynamic? If someone's really used to you giving away your energy, and all of a sudden you wisen up and go, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, they get pissed. Like, how dare you change the dynamic on me?
What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Sometimes
they
they
don't
come back
ask what's
stronger.
wrong with you, they tell you.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
And then what is that getting pissed trying to do energetically?
Control you.
Manipulate.
It's trying to get you to engage again. That's not true. That's not who I am. That's not what I'm doing. You just gave it up. Yay. The only answer is to disengage. So for all of the truly benevolent people in this world, that's one of our biggest pieces of advice. Stop engaging. You're supposed to fight about this. Don't engage with it. How much of that do you guys see on social media? All this stuff you're supposed to be fighting about with each other.
24/7.
Too much. And what's the reality? The reality is that most people are benevolent. Most people are not interested in fighting about the stuff that you guys are told you're supposed to fight about. Most of you just want to live simple lives, fulfilled lives, where you're happy and you have loving relationships and you have food to put on your table. It's not that complicated. And most of you want that for everyone else too. And it's really that simple. That's the truth of the majority of humanity. And if you guys can adopt the mindset of, in all of my interactions, what I'm working to achieve is harmony. Not being right, not being more powerful, not having some sort of power over dominion, but harmony. I'm working to achieve harmony. What does that mean? It means that if you're in a relationship with someone and the house needs cleaned, we're going to use a very simple example, you notice what they're paying attention to and you do something that's not being paid attention to. And you work as a team to accomplish a common goal. If you want a happy family, then what are you going to contribute to make sure that that dynamic is harmonious? And see, when you start to think this way, it becomes really clear, really fast, who's not willing to contribute to harmony. And then the question really needs to be, if someone that I'm spending a lot of time with is not interested in contributing to harmony, what is the point of the relationship? And we're not saying everyone's going to be great at that right at first. It's something you practice. But you've probably seen friendships or relationships where two people are really good at complementing one another. And things seem to move so effortlessly and easy. And those are the best feeling relationships to be in and to just observe and be around. Because it feels easy and it feels soft and it feels harmonious. And we can feel that in this group, a lot of the reasons that you don't have the life force you wish you had, or the energy that you wish you had, is because you're too tolerant, and it's a lie. Because inside you're actually not that tolerant, but you're trying to make yourself be that for whatever story that's being told. So let's use the example of the world right now, or your country right now. You had, months and months of these ridiculous mandates, which had zero evidence to support them, where you muzzled children. When the children had no risk of infection from SARS-CoV-2. Literally almost 0% chance of dying from it. And also was proven there was no such thing as asymptomatic carriers. So that was nonsense too. And tons of science behind the fact that these masks were causing damage to the mouth, the lungs, the skin. And yet, parents were still sending their children to schools where they were doing this to kids 8 hours a day. It's tragic. What if all of the parents would have said, no, we're not doing it? Do you think it would have continued? So they didn't have to put up a huge fight. They didn't have to go kill anyone. They really they would at least 50%, at least, really would have needed to say, we're not doing it. At least after 2 months of it being obviously BS. It would have ended, right? Or this injection that your country is obsessed with right now. If 50% or more had just said, no, we're not doing it, loudly, truly 50% didn't do it, but 50% is not being loud about it. Do you think it would be a different outcome? Do you think that entire thing would have been a different outcome? We're telling you it would have been. And all that would have had to occur is to disengage. That's the power of disengaging. When you disengage, you no longer offer energy to a thing. And if you no longer offer energy to a thing that's dysfunctional, the dysfunction either has to find someone else to interact with, or it dies. So in a family, for example, where there's let's say a narcissistic father, which means a father that's completely interested in power over, completely interested in always being right, has motivation toward winning, but not motivation toward harmony. And instead of everyone disengaging with that person and saying, we're not going to continue to give you power in this way, often what the dynamic is let's feed this person's insecurities through lies, meaning let's feed the insecurity as though we don't see it, even though we do, making that person more and more of a monster. This happens in company settings, You know, such and such, oh my gosh, such and such is such a bitch. But then someone gets near that such and such and they're like, oh my gosh, you look so pretty today. And you're just so good at your job and blah, 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 right? Consistently feeding the insecurity, which is what's creating the monster. It's insecurity that creates narcissism. And if people would just be honest and not engage, there's so many aspects of what occurs in your world that wouldn't occur anymore. And you don't have to fight it. You don't have to kill it. Nothing. You just have to not engage with it. All of the baiting that your government does to you guys, if you wouldn't take the bait, it would dissolve. And we want you to understand that in your world right now, it's really, really important that you get this. You have this narcissistic entity, which is posing as world governments, trying its best to suck the life force out of you. And the best thing you can do is disengage with it. And put your efforts into engaging with your fellow humans to build that which is trying to be sucked away from you. To expand that which is real and to diminish that which is fake. And that's one of the main things you can do to improve the life force of yourself, whether it's in your personal relationships with your spouse, kids, job, whatever, or your societal relationships with one another and with these tyrannical governments. Is to realize, okay, whatever is happening here is trying to diminish us. So how about we don't diminish us? How about we feed us? And figure out, what does that mean? How do you feed that which you perceive to be attempted to cause diminishment? How do you feed it? Yeah, build yourself up, build others up. This what's happening right here, this is resistance to what's being asked of you. And you're not out shooting anyone. And you're not in streets protesting. But you're building community. And you're building it at such a deep level that you're creating connection and bonds that can't be broken. Right?
Right.
Is there anything stronger than that? Susan, you know that Angel loves you.
Yes.
And nobody could really tell you otherwise, could they? So that bond can't be manipulated. That's what we want you guys to understand. We want you to understand that you have the power to create bonds and connections that can't be manipulated. Bonds and connections within yourself, bonds and connections with your great creator, bonds and connections with each other. And in those bonds and connections, you can't be manipulated. And if you can't be manipulated, your energy won't be stolen. Because it's through manipulation that your energy is siphoned. And when you look at tolerance, or interacting with narcissistic people, or interacting with narcissistic governments, what's the common theme? Manipulation. It's always the common theme. It's the one thing that's happening, which is sucking your life force out of you. So one of our main messages to you in regard to how to be your strongest version, how to have the most life force, is build yourself up in all of the ways which make you so strong that you cannot be manipulated. Because what that means is that you have control of your own energy. And it's not a small undertaking, because manipulation occurs through any insecurity. Super important to understand that. That's why it's essential to be able to be honest with yourself in the way that Pamela was talking about. Because when you can be honest with yourself about your own weaknesses and your own insecurities, you understand exactly where those who have that intuitive ability to manipulate, where they're going, what they're going for. And then you can recognize when it's happening. And you can disengage. Yes. And then you'll feel yourself kind of reeling back. You'll realize, whoa, I was engaging emotionally. Because as soon as I try to disengage, all this stuff, whoa, that asshole, blah, 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 blah. Right?
Yes.
And that's you realizing, ooh, I was engaging and I was giving away my energy. Because see, those who are siphoning energy, they don't care what kind you give them. They don't care. It can be anger, sure, yeah, give me anger. It can be sadness, hell yeah, give me sadness. Because if you're not someone who cares about the quality of the energy, you're just going to use it for fuel. And this is what's important to understand about dark magic, which is absolutely what's occurring on your planet right now. It's absolutely what is included in your indoctrination camps. The dark magic of this world is real, and you have a way to fight against it, which is to understand how it's occurring, that it only is able to exist with your insecurities and with your weaknesses, and it preys on those things to extract energy from you to fuel itself. That's dark magic. Because what is the opposite of that? Truly benevolent, loving people, what kind of energy are they exchanging with one another? Yeah. And even if someone's angry or sad or whatever, if, in truly benevolent relationships where there's no power over happening, what's occurring if someone's upset? Yeah. Exactly what occurred yesterday with Michelle. Michelle and Pamela had a perfect interaction to show what that looks like. But see, if Pamela was a Sith Lord, then in that situation where she's crying like that, instead of you taking it on to help relieve her, you would take it from her and feed her fear and keep pulling the fear for fuel for the self. Because what was happening? That was an insecurity she was having, right?
Okay, say that again. If I had.
See, now she wants a breakdown on how to do it now. Don't do it.
So what we're saying, so she had a tick on her. She was in a state of fear. Your natural inclination was to feel it with her because you love her and because you're not a black witch, you're a white witch. You don't engage in dark magic, you engage in the light magic. If you were a dark magician, you would have pulled the fear, you would have still extracted the emotion itself, and then you would have fed it. Yeah, you're right. You need to go get that checked.
So you're suggesting it's a loop.
It's absolutely a loop.
You're taking it in,
Yeah.
feeding it back, and then getting something out of it yourself and feeding it back and just keep this thing going and feeding and feeding and feeding it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Attachment, too.
So it's not only just
It's
parasitic.
it's completely parasitic and it's manipulative.
Yes.
So it understands, ooh, I can extract energy that way. Oh, And there are those in your world that actually are very aware and good at it. And your world governments are a part of that. Really important to understand. Your media is a part of that. What do you think your media is doing constantly? Yes. Create more fear, more fear, more fear. Look at all the deaths, the deaths, the deaths, the deaths. For what? For generally an energetic entity, which is dark, which has existed on this planet for a long time.
Can you do that unintentionally if you have your own fear?
You can do, yeah, you can. And that's what we're trying to say, is that you guys have been brought up in a world that actually encourages this. It's actually thought of as normal. And then you have this other reaction occurring that says, well, just don't look at anything that's scary. Because in the avoidance, you're somehow focusing on the positive. That's still a part of the dark magic trap. And we're going to explain to you why. When you're avoiding that which is dark, is it going away? What's happening?
Well, first, you're not building yourself up, and because you're just avoiding darkness, it should be getting bigger and bigger.
That's right.
Because you're doing absolutely nothing.
Exactly. So avoidance feeds darkness.
You need to shed light.
Because avoidance is darkness. So the fine line that those of you who are aware have to walk is, I see the darkness. I know the darkness is here. But I do not entertain it. I shine light upon it. I do not interact with it. I expose it. And when it exists within the self, I transform it. My insecurities, I transform. How? How do you transform insecurities? Well, we teach you some different methods. That's what our emotional alchemy class is about. But in general, you can look at your own insecurities and you can come up with plans for yourself on how to correct them. Insecurities can be corrected through behavior. So give us an insecurity and we'll help someone with it.
Not liking confrontation.
Perfect. So not liking confrontation means that in order to correct it, it requires you to engage in confrontation. If you're someone who doesn't like confrontation, what that means is that you don't like that feeling of kind of going toe to toe. So what that means is that it's important to find a way to be able to confront with gentleness.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, when I'm ready to confront, I just want to punch you out. I just want to say every cuss word I can think of. And that's how I want to confront.
Yeah. Because you've gotten too full. Confrontations, in fact, in reality with the world that you guys have right now, and because you've been trained in the way you have, confrontations actually should probably happen a lot of the time to keep the energy clean. But you have these tendencies to go, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal, so I'm not going to address it. And then it builds up and builds up and builds up until it's like, ugh! And something as small as you left your dish out again feels like you killed my dog. Right? Yeah.
Everybody looks at me like,
So the answer is to when you got to catch yourself going, I'm doing that thing where I'm like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. And in that moment, when you're uncomfortable, you go, okay, look, obviously to you, not that big of a deal, but to me it is. So for us to have harmony in this area, please, can you please, when you're done with your dish, put it in the dishwasher, please. If we can do these in little increments, I won't blow up. I won't feel like you don't appreciate me. I won't feel like you think I'm your servant, right? Even if you have to do that 20 freaking times. That's better than holding it in until you're going, I don't think I can be gentle right now because I'm too pissed. Because it's in those moments that the relationship gets damaged. And sometimes those moments are not going to be avoided because the person that you've tried confronting isn't listening. And when that happens, that's really on them. And they had it coming. They're going to have that larger confrontational moment. But this is the process of humans learning to be in harmony with one another. That which is important to one of you is not that important to the other one. But if the person is important to you, then you have to figure out a way to remember that that's important to them and take care of it so that you don't have blow-ups.
So, just thinking about what you're saying, my own personal experiences, for me it comes from expectations. And having to be, I'm upset because I had an expectation that I didn't clearly communicate to that person.
Sure, that's definitely a part of it. We would still call that a confrontation of a certain, yeah. And expectation is a great topic because everyone has them. No one talks about them. They assume. I assume that you know my expectations for you. And when you don't achieve the expectations that I have for you, I'm going to be really pissed and really disappointed. And we've talked with this with our students, like in the beginning of a relationship with someone, especially romantic relationships where no one discusses their expectations. And then a year later going, someone is they're just not doing the things I want them to do, and they're not being the person I want them to be. And our question is, did they have any idea that's what you wanted? Because if people are really honest with each other at the front, if someone was very honest with their expectations, then the other person has the opportunity to go, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. That's just not me. You know what that's called? Incompatibility. Do you know why most relationships fail? Incompatibility. That's the main reason for failure of most relationships. Because when there's not energetic compatibility, what does that mean? It means there's not harmony. And if there's not harmony, it's not going to work out. And if there's not compatibility, it's not going to work out. And one of the main things that expectations will teach you is whether or not you're actually compatible with someone. Two people that are really good together are good at meeting each other's expectations. For example, Angel's first husband was an excellent liar. Lied all the time, truly. Is that compatible with someone whose main value is honesty? No. The problem is with a liar that they're not going to be honest with you, that they're not going to be able to hold up their end of the deal on that one. But if she would have realized at the very beginning of that relationship that one of my core values is honesty, and I know he lies a lot, so we're not compatible. Bye. Then it's not, he's a narcissist, he's an asshole, he's a freak, all this stuff. It's, we weren't compatible. Why? Because honesty is one of my main values, and it's not one of his at all. You just feel that? It just dissolves. Dissolves. And what occurs then? One keeping their own life force. One having control of their own life force.
I have, how do you, the people who are, I stopped engaging with people because I found myself arguing about not getting the shot. And I don't want to stop trying to convince them, but I don't want to make them feel dumb, blind, and stupid either. So I'm having a hard time balancing that. Just give them information that might lead them to not getting it.
Yeah, that's about all you can do right now. Unfortunately, those of you who are not being manipulated mentally by this whole thing, you're able to see it pretty clearly. What you have to remember is that those who are being manipulated aren't seeing clearly. So they're completely stuck in the loop that we just talked about. So arguing with someone who's stuck in that loop isn't necessarily going to do anything. Even giving them information isn't necessarily going to do anything because they're stuck in an emotion manipulation loop. So, but the best thing you can do is stick to your own guns. And if they're interested in why you're sticking to your own guns, then you can offer information. And if somebody says to you, well, you should have it or whatever because you just need to and it's selfish that you're not, disengage. Because what's happening right there? You're selfish if you don't. Tell us what that is.
That's manipulation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a complete emotional manipulation. Somebody telling you how you should feel about something, or calling you a pretty deep insult because you won't do something that they think you should do, yeah, that's 100% manipulation. So when you notice manipulation, don't engage with it. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Toodaloo. There's not much else you can do. You're dealing with a large portion of your society who feels that way. And unfortunately, the wake up that they go through is going to be pretty rough. So those of you who can see right now need to keep your wits about you. We're not saying to stop speaking truth ever. Speak truth, but don't engage in the manipulation and don't engage in fighting. So because what is fighting? Can you guys feel what happens energetically in a fight? Do you ever feel exhilarated after a fight?
What's it like energetically pushing and pulling?
Energetically, it's like those cartoons where the animals are fighting or something, and it's like this big ball of energy.
It's just all moving all over the with no,
It's just expended energy with no
and everyone
purpose.
is wasting it.
Yeah, because it's a fight for who's right. And just like we said at the beginning, a fight for who's right doesn't yield good results. Only a fight that where both of the goal is toward harmony does it actually yield good results. And in that case, it wouldn't be necessarily a fight, it would be a heated engagement where two people are really genuinely trying to understand the perspective that each one is having. That's healthy. And it's okay to even get flustered in that setting. But you must know when the energy being put into that is going toward this culmination that you're creating together of enhanced understanding. So if you ever check yourself in the midst of an argument or whatever, and your main goal is to be right, then it's best to just go ahead and disengage. But on the topic of the injection, for example, if your main goal is to inform because you love someone and you want them to have greater understanding of what's unfolding, then you feel inside you how you're not attached to being right. It's not about being right. So the kind of energy you put into that confrontation is going to be different. And if you feel the other person really needing to be right, disengage.
I know.
I'll get it right now.
Because you always know if you're engaged with someone, and if you know yourself and you know, my point in this conversation isn't to be right, it's to inform. And you can feel from the other person their intent in this is to be right, then you're incompatibly matched in that confrontation. And it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to do anything. And the best way to conserve your energy, your life force, is to know when it's appropriate to disengage and when it's appropriate to engage. And to always have your awareness and your feelers out in those situations. And to notice when you start to become involved in a way that's sucking energy out of you. And the minute that you notice it's happening, to discipline yourself into disengaging. And then evaluate, what was I doing? How did I behave in that? What was my intention in that? What was I doing where it was actually creating this extraction of my energy? Evaluate how you're doing it so that you become the master of your own energetic space. You guys understand this concept?
What if there is a situation, for my example, the divorce, where there has to be a certain level of engagement with this person until that is finalized?
Well, then you make it only what's necessary. And you be as factually based as possible. So the main thing is, you want to be able to assess who you're engaging with emotionally and if you want to be doing that. Because anytime you engage emotionally, you're expending energy. And usually when two people are getting divorced, what's become very clear is that they're not good at engaging with each other emotionally. So you have to figure out, how can I engage with him in a way that's not involving my emotions? And one of the best ways to do that, we don't know what kind of person he is or anything, but if he's calling you names or he's trying to guilt trip you into things or, trying to manipulate you or anything like that, it's those aspects that you don't answer to.
Yeah. I love communication.
Yeah. Because also what happens in unhealthy relationships is that dynamic is created and practiced. So that field of information, that field of energetic interaction is big. That memory field, just like we were telling you guys about your energetic fields, the different fields of humanity, how they all contain memory. Same thing. Family dynamics contain memory. Marriages contain memory. Energetic memory. So as soon as you step back into it, you can feel it. Oh, there it is again. Why do you think so many people don't want to go to their family reunions and stuff like that? Or don't like going to Christmas and all of that? Because they feel like, oh, when I'm away from it, I feel so strong. And then the minute I step into it, I'm like that pathetic little girl again. Because the memory of the dynamic exists. And until you genuinely become someone different than the person that was involved in that dynamic, as soon as you step back into it, there it is. So a good example of that is Angel with her mother. Really, really unhealthy dynamic those two had. But she spent decades changing herself, this one. And now, when she's in the dynamic with her mom literally doesn't know what to do with her. She doesn't know how to interact with her. She doesn't know how to insult her, nothing. Because she doesn't know her anymore. Because this one worked on herself to such a degree and created herself so whole that even when she's in contact with her, the dynamic is not the same. And the only one left to really deal with that is her mother, going, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with her. And her brother the same way. His response is just don't talk to her anymore. But our point is that you're not doomed to those dynamics forever. If you do what we're instructing you in regard to your own insecurities and really being honest about your own weaknesses and how to deal with your own weaknesses and how to deal with your insecurities and how to strengthen them and actually do it and actually become more and more and more this whole version of yourself, then when you enter back into a relationship or a close proximity with that individual, you are no longer energetically embodying the aspect that you would need to for that memory to come up and interact in the same way. So then it has to find a new dynamic. And the brilliant thing about that is that you really find out who actually wants a relationship with you because they will try to figure out how to adjust their side of the dynamic. And if they're not interested, not truly interested in a relationship with you, then they will not try to figure out how to adjust their side of the dynamic. And all you'll hear from them is weird things like blame and such. In which case, you do. Yeah. Yes, Frank?
Yeah, I recently had joined a retired men's group, and their whole thing was about getting the vaccine, and a lot of them were talking about it. And so I just said, well, I wasn't going to do it right now, and I'd reevaluate at some point in the future. One guy kind of kept attacking me, and so he'd send me a long email, and I sent him back. The reason I wouldn't, he responded to each of those and said a bunch of BS and just kind of emotional stuff. So the entire scientific community was for it. And I said, no, that's not true. And showed him some stuff that wasn't true, and he still kept attacking me. Finally just said, I called the guy who runs the group. I said, look, I'm not going to participate anymore. Because to me, it's about being safe and feeling whole. And feeling attacked, to me, is not the place I want to be. And I like a lot of people, they're great people. I just can't be around that one guy because he's just got to be right. He's got to show me I'm wrong and selfish and stupid. And, it's just not how I want to be involved. I'm going to miss that somewhat, but also I just got to be the place that's good for me.
Good for you, Frank.
Donna, did you have something?
I did have a question. So if it's the narcissist and it's your mother, because I'm thinking about your mothers, and you disengaged, there's a chance there would be a new dynamic with a narcissist.
If you're truly dealing with a narcissist, it's very unlikely that they're going to do anything on their side of things, no matter how much you disengage. But the point is that if you disengage because they're doing their manipulative stuff, then what happens is that dynamic where you were a part of the manipulation ends. It might mean the relationship in general ends also.
Which is probably fine.
But the thing is, it's then in her court to say, I really want a relationship with my daughter. I'm going to have to adjust the way I interact with her. Because I'm noticing that when I interact with her, my usual methods of interaction are like going up against a wall. In psychology, it's called gray rock. You become as boring and dull as a gray rock. Anything that comes up against you, you just...
So disengaging doesn't always mean hanging up on someone or refusing to see them.
No.
But what if it's like 45 minutes of this like manipulation attempt?
Well, if you're allowing someone
I
to
guess
do
I
that
could
for
do
45
some
minutes...
non-moving form or something.
Well, no, if someone's trying to manipulate you for 45 minutes, then I gotta go.
Yeah, like that, there's some version in there when you kind of know.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's really about respect, guys. It's about self-respect, right? This is another way to say this. One of the best ways to conserve your own life force is to practice self-respect. Simply put. So when you notice someone engaging with you in a way that's disrespectful, disengage. Why is a mother being disrespectful to her daughter anyway? That whole behavior needs retrained. And that's all you're doing. It's really true that you teach people how to treat you. So if you allow someone to manipulate you over and over and over again by being overly tolerant, what are you teaching them?
It's okay to be treated like that.
Yeah. And that's yeah. There's nothing wrong with the way you're treating me. That's what you're saying. There's nothing wrong with the way you're treating me. So does that help the other person have any awareness on how dysfunctional they're being?
No.
So is that loving? So see how you guys have been told a story about love? That enabling someone's dysfunction is loving? Nonsense. How is that even possible? If nobody would engage, if no one would enable each other's dysfunctions, then you wouldn't have a dysfunctional world. Your dysfunctional people would be off in some corner screwing with each other, and everyone else would be happy. Right? How are we doing on time? Are we over?
No, there is no over.
No, you're good.
No over.
Do you guys have a better understanding about how to conserve your own life force in this way? And can you feel how it gets drained out of you through these types of things? And do you have a better understanding of what dark magic is? And what light magic is? And we wanted to address Sean's question that he asked Angel earlier today about the intelligent prayer. So we know that we hit on that yesterday, and it's somewhat of a complex topic because there's a few different things going on. You're first really engaging with the energy that's occurring. And if you're not engaging with the energy that's occurring, it's impossible to create an intelligent prayer to direct energy. So the first thing that has to be established to be able to create intelligent prayer is empathy. And in order for someone to be truly empathic, truly, not just the word that's thrown around by all kinds of people today, where it's everyone else's fault that someone feels that way. True empathy is honest and says, I can feel what's going on in you, and I can feel what's being plucked in me. And I take accountability for what's being plucked in me, and I offer compassion to what's happening in you. And there's your beginning point. And in that beginning point, then you take in information about what's going on inside whoever it is you're praying for. Maybe it's for yourself. Because you're figuring out how to properly address weaknesses. Because all prayer is about strength. Think about it. Any prayer you've said, if it wasn't to reinforce strength, to reinforce thankfulness, to reinforce gratitude and appreciation, then it was about creating strength. Right? You're not healing, you're not praying for people that are already strong, except to say, thank you for so-and-so's strength. Thank you for so-and-so's health. Right? Which means that prayers are occurring because you're trying to assist energetically a weakness. Isn't that interesting? Have you guys ever thought about it in that way? Because intuitively you understand in that area that I feel called to pray for, there is a weakness. There needs to be more energy there. There needs to be balance brought to this thing. So I'm going to pray about it. That means I'm going to direct energy toward that which is weak to help it become strong. Because once it's strong, my prayer will be, thank you. It's a simplistic yet profound understanding of prayer. So what you're doing is understanding a weakness and then allowing yourself to align with the way the energy can strengthen it. So yesterday when we prayed on behalf of Michelle, notice we said the prayer in first person. Why? Why did we do that? We did it because we acknowledge that there is no separation between us and Michelle. Yeah. We know the truth. We're existing in the truth. These eyes perceive a separate body, but we know the truth. There's no separation between Michelle and Angel and us and you and you and you and you and you and you. So when we embody her as though it's we, and we move the energy into its full embodiment of strength, then we have properly directed energy, properly transformed energy. And as we did it for us, we did it for her, because we acknowledged in complete comprehension and complete understanding that she is us, we are her. Because what happens if we pray for her separately? Now what? Have we strengthened the energy or diminished it? We've diminished it because now we're saying she's separate. Now we're saying that we're buying into the idea that in order for energy to move into her, it has to do something like this. And instead, what's really occurring, what's truly occurring, whether or not your science can see it yet or not, what's really occurring, here's Michelle, here's us, here's Source. That's it. It's all together, all the time. And as a whole, you are recognizing areas of weakness. And you're taking that weakness and you're transforming it with the energy available to you, which is abundant and always present. Yes, Donna?
Do you teach that about Source and how to move that energy in healing integration?
Yes, we do. The main thing that happens, the reason why you guys have trouble channeling Source energy is because you believe you're separate from it. And what's happening there? The dialogue from your mind, from whatever teachings you grew up with, whatever, is getting in the way. So it's using up all of that chi. So what we did in our healing form is created a way to move your mind and your ego completely out of the way so that the channeling process is much easier for you. And those who can't handle the monotony of our healing form, quit. But it's monotonous for a reason. It's monotonous because in monotony, you cannot hang your identity on it. You can't hang your intelligence on it. You can't hang your talents on it. Nothing. You can't hang ego on it at all. In the same way that this brilliant form of Pangu Shenggong was created to completely bypass the ego, those who are annoyed with its monotony will quit. And why are you annoyed with the monotony of it? Because it's not challenging your ego. I don't know what's happening. It's boring. It's 26 times. How can anything be happening with this? It's completely useless. Yet, if you get out of the way and accept that somebody in the world figured out how to create an energetic form that helps you become limitless, and then practice it, allowing your ego to take a hit because it wasn't you, then you get to absorb the energy from that practice. The best spiritual practices challenge your ego by not involving them. That's a deep one. That's a deep statement. That's why sitting in nature is one of the best spiritual practices. There's nothing to attach to. Did that give you any more clarification, Sean? It's really a process of teaching. Why don't you just take our class, Sean? Yes, Karen?
I have a question. Yesterday I noticed that your presence in nature is larger than your presence is in a building. Like, obviously it's bigger than it is on Zoom, but could you elaborate on maybe why that feels that way?
Well, we are nature. And certainly that's where we feel at home. And certainly that's where the energy flows the easiest. You know, we want you guys to understand that nature is always supporting you. And as you move more into the nature-based reality, the more you will feel fed. The city matrix-based reality is very harmful and not natural to your state. We, of course, engage with the technology and whatnot because in certain ways it's absolutely brilliant to be able to connect with people everywhere. But certainly there's more strength in the true connection of your home, just as there is for us as well. Yes?
Question. Maybe a little bit off topic, but I thought of it earlier. So, how can we really tap into like the information that we already gathered and processed, and it's there somewhere, but doesn't seem like it's like so readily available?
What do you mean? Like what kind of information?
Just like stuff we've read, or just knowledge that we've gained, or different things that seem like we will read a book and then you forget about it, or you know, we read the same book 8 different times and it's like different every time. I mean, obviously you get knowledge every time, but
Okay, so that's a great question, and we want to address it first from the way you guys are taught to learn.
What was the question?
She's saying, how do we access information that we've acquired? Like you read a book or something, you forget about it, and then how do you access that? So you're taught in your indoctrination camps that you read something, and then you memorize it, and then you take some type of worthless test on it. And that's your intelligence, right? But your energetic beings, what's really occurring is when you take in information, it's being stored in you and will be used when it's needed. And the intelligence of you is such that it doesn't care about what the world has labeled important for you to remember. Instead, what it's pulling out is that which is essential for how you are processing life or how you are navigating life. So whatever it is that you brought in, if you'll allow it, if you'll allow yourself to be in a specific flow, you will be able to apply whatever knowledge you actually gained from that in a way that's more abstract. So it's not going to be like, oh, I memorized blah, blah, blah. We'll pick out of her database an example. She read a book in high school called Death Be Not Proud, about a guy with a brain tumor and such. Does she remember what that book is really about? Can we sit here and regurgitate it to you? No. But what profoundly affected her was how he conducted himself in the story. And that's what we can feel in her. How to handle crisis. How to handle illness. Far more important. Do you see what we're saying? So the intelligence of you is taking in information in a way that's important for you to then navigate your life. And you guys are taught from the time you're little of, look here, this is what's important when something deeper is occurring. You really should have no test that isn't more essay structured, where you're actually being able to expand upon how it enriched you, how whatever you learned enriched you. Is there really any other kind of learning? There's really not. Every single thing you take in, you figure out how to enrich you or you toss out. And the intelligence within you is always doing that. Through your interactions, through what you read, through all of it. It's sifting and sorting and understanding genuine enrichment. That's why it's so important to study that which you're actually interested in. Because there's some kind of enrichment that's occurring when you're interested in it. There's a reason you're magnetized to it. And then just to be able to trust that I'm not obtaining this information to look cool, to be able to regurgitate. Now there are some people who have those steel trap, memories and they can just remember the whole thing, but most people aren't like that. And does it really serve that much of a purpose anyway, except to be right? It's far more useful if you're taking in information and allowing yourself to get the deeper message of it so that you can then interact with life in a way that's healthier for you. And if you're not able to have that type of alchemy occurring with the information that you're taking in, to where it's helping you point yourself in a direction of a life that's more authentically yours, what's the point of the information?
Then how can we extrapolate the lessons and stuff from our past lives? Because there's things that are popping up in this life from a past life, but I don't understand all of what it is or what its lesson is, other than not to repeat it. But I'm not exactly sure what it is, other than a bad pattern that I've carried over into this life.
Yeah, our general stance on other lives is that you're in this one, and anything that's coming in from other lives, and there's plenty, because three of your fields as a human being have other lifetimes embedded into them. So if you try to chase those, you're going to go on wild goose chase forever. The question is always, how is it affecting me now? Because any dysfunction that was carried over, it doesn't matter. It's still, how do I deal with it now? So why don't you give us some example of it and we'll help.
Simple example is that I had abusive relationships in other lives that I brought here, that I'm out of, and thank goodness in this life it didn't kill me, but it was very close. I would have liked to have known that before I married him, before he tried to kill me.
We understand. You can't change the history. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? So if you really allow yourself to investigate, who was I in that dynamic? How did I fuel that dynamic? How did I invite it? What insecurities, what weaknesses about me drew that to me? What strengths about me drew that to me? What did I learn from the experience? What can I change about me to make sure that I don't attract that type of interaction? Or if I do, and this part's really important, if I do, because often whatever is sitting at your core is attracting things that are opposite to it, whether you want them to or not. But the key is to be able to see it. So Angel attracts plenty of dishonesty because one of the core values is honesty, because it's constantly sharpening it. But she's not going to marry it or be best friends with it. She's going to go, yeah, I know that energy. Cool. Glad you're here to sharpen. Not going to spend much time with you. So it's always about what is here now. Everything you have to work with is here now, always. Always. Even if you think it is in your past, in this life, or in some other life, it's still here now. Because there's actually no time other than through this window. From this space, you perceive time. And so from this space, there is time. But as soon as you step outside of it, there isn't. Which means there aren't any past lives, there's just lives. So it's the energetic emission that's attracting that to you. So the question is, how do I adjust my energetic emission? And you know what we feel from you very easily, Brandy, you're always wanting to give something away. You're very generous. Here. Oh, I can tell you're totally broken. Here you go. And there's this innate aspect of you that's doing that. But you're doing it with the wrong people. You know, if you want to help people in that way, then become a practitioner with that person, not a romantic partner. And then look inside yourself and go, am I actually attracted to people who are strong in those areas? Or have I confused my sexuality with my desire to help others? And for some of you, there is this erotic fulfillment from helping others. And that's fine, but you need to understand what it is. And let it just be that. Like, I will get that interesting fulfillment from helping you, but not from having sex with you or having kids with you.
Damn.
And once you figure that out, it's so clear. I mean, the tolerance that she's talking about, once I figured that out with all of my previous work and things, and I cry about it still, because now it's like, shit, it was so right there. And so now I'm not as tolerant because I know why I was being tolerant and what it created.
And you know the truth. It wasn't tolerance.
Yeah, it wasn't tolerant.
It was a lie.
Yeah.
I'm being tolerant. No, I'm not, because I'm actually in a state of resentment, which means I'm not being tolerant. It means I'm pissed.
What is tolerance?
Which is
that good tolerance?
Sure. Tolerant is, you know, for example, with a child. Where is he? That. Yeah. So that's be tolerant with a kid, because while they're learning and you're teaching, you don't want to be intolerant and a total asshole to where they think that They can't screw up at all. With other human beings, you want to be tolerant in their mistakes, especially when there's someone who's trying to work on them and correct themselves. Then you use tolerance. But you don't use tolerance in a setting where it's like, screw me over again, screw me over again. I'm so tolerant, screw me over again. You don't want to do that.
Like you're tolerant when you're loving others, but you're tolerance where you're not loving yourself. Like you think you're being tolerant, but you're really.
But if you're paying attention,
mistreating yourself.
you can feel the diminishment occurring within yourself, and you're telling yourself a story like, oh, I'm doing this for him, or I'm doing this for my kids. And it's like, no, you're not. You're intentionally allowing yourself to be diminished because you're a coward. Because you're not willing to stand up for yourself and be honest with yourself about what truly hurts you. And as soon as you're able to be honest with yourself about what truly hurts you, and you say, no more, I love you and I'll be tolerant while you learn to correct yourself.
But if you don't correct yourself.
Yeah, but if you see someone not correcting themselves, then no more tolerance.
Disengage.
And we actually have such a beautiful example of that with this one right back here, Louise. She has practiced true tolerance with her husband in ways most people would not ever practice. But what has been occurring with him? Has he been working on correcting himself? Yeah, he has. It's been quite miraculous, in fact. But he had a long way to go. His beginning spot was pretty atrocious. So his correction was an extreme movement. And the man you see hanging out here is not the same person at all from when he first started working with us, and everyone who's in class with him will attest to that. But if he was still exhibiting the same behavior that he did the first time that she decided to be tolerant with him, is that tolerance anymore? No. It's just abuse. So tolerance, reserve it for those who are actually correcting themselves. And with all the rest, disengage. Okay. We've enjoyed this very much. Have you guys?
Yes, thank you so much.
We'll pass the baton to Keith.
You're